Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, Force here. Today we will be taking a look at a Barbarian leveling build focused on self-heal and doing massive amounts of AOE damage. Alright guys, so today we're going to be taking a look at a Barbarian AOE build. The focus is on doing massive amounts of damage and self-healing. This is going to be a leveling build. It's currently what I am using while leveling with my level 33 Barbarian. Now the main attributes of this are going to be Ground Stomp, Cleave, and the Rend ability. And we'll also take a look at the other abilities selected in this build and talk about why I have picked them. Alright, so let's start off with Cleave. The general idea of this build is to do the following. It is to leap or just maneuver yourself into a large clump of enemies, use Ground Stomp to get the enemies towards you and stun them, and then also use Cleave and Rend to do massive amounts of AOE damage to everything around you. Now let's take a look at all of this step by step. Starting off with the ability Cleave, this is going to be runed with Rupture. Reason we are picking Rupture is that the explosive aspect of this is pretty intense and it can chain off of itself, meaning that if you get one group to explode with Rupture, then that can trigger other groups to also explode. So this makes for some massive damage in your direct vicinity and is a really great finisher as well. Enemies slain by Cleave explode, causing 85% weapon damage to all their enemies within 8 yards. Really, really impressive indeed. Now, the next ability that is primary to this build is going to be Ground Stomp, runed with Wrenching Smash. Ground Stomp by itself is going to stun the enemies around you for 4 seconds. With Wrenching Smash, the area of effect is increased to 24 yards and it pulls all of the enemies close towards you. So you've got all of the enemies towards you and they are temporarily stunned, and then you throw down a Rend. Now what is going to happen with this is you're going to land the Rend, doing 210% weapon damage and causing them to bleed for 3 seconds, but I do have this runed with Ravage, increasing the range of that to 17 yards, giving you a better chance to hit multiple targets, and just in case you don't pull everything in close towards you with your Ground Stomp. The other supplemental abilities here is we do have Leap. The maneuverability is great to have. The additional armor is the rune that I have selected. Wouldn't go with something like Toppling Impact for this style of build, which sends enemies hurling away from you, because that's the opposite. With this build, we're trying to get people towards us, and because of that, I actually have selected Iron Impact as the rune of choice. 300% additional armor is going to be really important, and you may be wondering, why do you need that armor if you are ground stomping anyways and stunning them? Well, as you work your way up through the later difficulties, the stuns don't last as long. They're not nearly as effective. Also, you're still going to get hit, and armor is still important. Also, keep in mind, armor does reduce incoming magical damage as well. It is not only physical damage. So if you're getting hit at ranged while you're doing all of this to a group of enemies, having that extra armor after leaping is going to be very helpful as well. So the general idea is you leap into a group, you're going to Ground Stomp, pull them towards you and stun them, then you drop a Rend, causing bleed damage around you, and then you start cleaving as a finisher, causing people to explode, and it's sort of a chain reaction. The additional abilities that I've picked up are Revenge. Now, Revenge is really great because it does have that self-heal aspect, and I've also selected to go with the Vengeance is Mine, increasing the self-heal and also gaining some fury from it as well. Not really a big fan of this. Obviously, extra crit would be nice, but it doesn't fit the purpose of the build. Overall, though, I think once getting closer to level cap, going with something like the Provocation rune will be really good. As you can see, increases the chance Revenge will become active to 30% each time you get hit by an attack. So that's doubling the chance of Revenge becoming active. It has its self-heal innately, so getting that extra self-heal won't be as vital as having it proc more often. So that's just my idea on that anyways. And then lastly, I've picked up Seismic Slam. Now this build has been used primarily for me doing solo leveling. I think that with group leveling, Seismic Slam isn't as important. What Seismic Slam is giving me is a bit of control. It has that stun, but it also has a very, very large range, a 45-yard arc, with Seismic Slam. So what this allows me to do while playing solo is, if I'm controlling and working down a group and I see incoming enemies, I usually throw down Seismic Slam to halt their progression. It's going to knock them back, and it does do that stun with the stagger rune that is currently attached to it. Now, when playing in a group, I don't think this is going to be as effective, and it probably would be wise to go with something a little bit more group focused, taking a look possibly at like the War Cry skill. I mean, this is going to be something really great. Unleashes a rallying cry to increase armor for you and all your allies within 50 yards by 20% for 60 seconds. Maybe even go with something like Threatening Shout, although I think War Cry would be pretty good for that particular situation. Alright, so that is the primary skill selection that I've gone with for this build. We'll also take a quick look at the passive skills. While playing single player, currently I am focused on doing as much damage as possible while also getting some self-heal. So we're going with Ruthless, which is going to increase the hit chance for critical and the damage amount for critical hits. So 5% increased critical hit chance and 50% more critical hit damage. Bloodthirst is going to be some self-heal, gaining 3% of all damage done as life. And then Weapon Master, again, this is going to be more damage. Currently, my main weapon is actually an axe, so this is going to be 10% more critical hit chance. Again, overall, going to be more damage. I suppose it would be nice to also have a sword or a dagger as well for the increased damage. Now, if we were working in a group, again, we talked about possibly replacing Seismic Slam, and when it comes to the passives, if you were in a group, you'd probably want to focus on a more tanky build. So getting something like Nerves of Steel for the increased armor, increased by 100% of your vitality, or Tough as Nails, which is going to increase your armor by 25%, and also increasing Thorns damage. This is going to be especially useful if you have Thorns related gear, reflection damage gear on you. So that is my current passive and active skill setup, and let's take a look at a little bit of this in action, just talk about it once again, kind of what you're meant to do. So going ahead and doing this into a group, pulling things towards you, and then rending them and continuing to do the Cleave, which is going to cause that explosive damage. And let's move forward. Now this is currently played on Nightmare. I am level 34 or something along those lines. I'll check in 1 second. I think maybe level 33 or 34. And you can see how it's pretty effective. And, you know, what about single target? Let me mention this really quickly as well. Single target, certainly important. I found to be the case that mostly just while playing the game through, most of the time you're facing massive groups of enemies. When you come up against a boss, for example, Cleave, not going to be the best decision. You can go with something like Frenzy. If you're going to switch out from your shield and you want to go a two-hand Frenzy action, that'd be pretty good. Or going with something like Bash, the Clobber Rune, really awesome, especially while you're playing through normal, still pretty effective in Nightmare. Gonna see real big diminishing returns during Hell and Inferno, but Bash with Clobber, really good for normal and Nightmare. Having that constant stun on your on the boss that you're facing is really, really good. But while playing solo and just going through the game, I found that most of the time AOE is the most effective. Single target hasn't been as necessary. And if you're really interested in getting more single target, maybe you want to do something like replace Seismic Slam with a single target like Bash. I mean, that is certainly a possibility. Let's try to go ahead and find another group of enemies and just watch this rotation. Really, really, again, effective, mostly with large groups, so clumping people up is going to be kind of a poor thing. So here we go, gonna go up, pull everything towards me, go ahead and... It's so effective. It is absolutely hilarious. And you talk about like the long distance as well that you get from Seismic Slam. I found that really also useful. Find something. There we go, here we go. Ready? Pulling everything into me, and then just doing massive amounts of AOE damage and laughing at them the entire time. When you start to get low, that's when you're going to be throwing in using the Revenge once it has proc. That does proc on being hit. And there you go, guys. So that is a quick look at the solo leveling build that I have been using for the Barbarian. We talked about adjustments that you might want to make for a group, such as being more focused on being tanky, maybe not so concerned about getting Seismic Slam, maybe focus on a group shout or buff. As of now, though, this has been fairly useful for me as I'm working my way through Nightmare difficulty on the Barbarian while playing solo. Alright guys, I want to thank you so much for watching. As always, if you like the content, please subscribe. Also be sure to check out the website, 4strategygaming.com.